Guys, it's about 5:30. You've had a long day. I'm going to ask you to just stand up and stretch. A good stretch. Get it out there. My clock hasn't started, so. All right, thank you very much. Thanks for doing that. Awesome. When I was 6, my family moved from a small university town in northern Pennsylvania, and I had to abandon my life of sartorial excellence. And we moved to an even smaller rural farming village in eastern Nigeria. It was 6 years after the war, the civil war in Nigeria in the late 60s, which was why my family ended up in America. And I went to the village school. That's me, always a teacher's pet next to the teacher. And the road to school, that's that road, that's present day, but it's the same road, it's always looked like that, is the road I always think is where I first had some kind of perception of what creativity was. A people emerging from war, one of the easiest lines of business to get into was to drive a bus from the municipal capital, which was 5 miles to the sort of the north, to the south, and up to the more regional capital, which was 45 minutes up north. And you'd buy a car, and these would be old rickety cars, and they would try and decorate them and kind of have this creativity around their aspirations that they were going to make a better life for themselves. And so hand-painted on these buses would be things like, "The young shall grow," "No condition is permanent," "No man is an island." And I think that those things were maybe the first time I understood the mix of language and design and creativity. But also, I think if you'd asked us, any of us playing around, to talk about creativity, we probably would have found that a strange question. Because for us, creativity was just part of life. If you wanted a toy car, you found empty milk tins and you put them together and you had a toy car. If you wanted a kite, you got old newspaper and some sap from the rubber tree and you made a kite. It's actually quite instructive that the Igbo language, which is the language of that part of Nigeria, doesn't actually really have it. Did I hear an Igbo person here? Whee! Woohoo! Doesn't have a word for creativity, not exactly. There is a compound word. It's called akon'uche, and I'll explain why it's a compound word. But it's the word you could also use for intelligence, ability, problem solving. It's the same word. And the two things I find really interesting about it. First, as I said, it's a compound word. It's made up of ako, and the word na is and uche, which is craft and thought. And actually, when you put both words together, it means something bigger than just two things. It's one thing, it's an ability, it's human ability. A belief that we all should be able to make things and we all should be able to think. And you bring that together and it's actually about human ability. The other thing that's interesting about akon'uche, which is different from the way we use creativity, is that you can't really use it as an adjective. You can't use it to describe somebody. It's a noun, it's something that exists and you access. So use your akon'uche to figure out how to keep yourself busy, to cross the road, to solve a problem. It's an innate human ability, and we all have it. Akon'uche is part of what it means to be human. And I've always found this contrast, having had a career mostly in the West, about how creativity, no offense to our industries, has been colonized and ghettoized by a few. We even have jobs that we call, you can clap. Even though this is not something we should be happy about. We have people we call the creatives. We even have types of work we call the creative. And I think this has happened in the Western world, and it's sort of something that's probably happened over the last 200 years, and it's a fallout of the battle between man and machine. The things society has tended to make big are the things that help us control the machine, and I'll explain that a bit later. But this notion of the battle between man and machine is one that's gone on now for 200 years. Probably the most A well-known story of it is the story of John Henry. When you talk about John Henry in Europe, people don't understand it, but you guys know John Henry, who is the steam drill man. And his story is really the story of the Negro resisting the man resisting the machine, as the steam drill comes on board and begins to disrupt the way people have made a living for hundreds of years. There's a great little poem about John Henry that goes, "The man who invented the steam drill thought he was mighty fine. John Henry drove his 15 feet. The steam drill only drove 9. Man versus machine, the man wins." The funny thing about John Henry's story, as this picture kind of illustrates, is regardless of which version of it you read, it ends the same. Exhausted, John Henry dies. In the battle between man and machine, we have to face it. Because we invent machines to do things we can't do, we can never beat them at their own game. But that's actually a really good story. All our history has been inventing things for machines to do so that our lives can become more human. The till, the hoe, all the things that in the agrarian age that we use to extend our ability to farm increased our ability to feed ourselves. In the industrial age, we invented management because all of a sudden we could really automate the heavy things of production and we could manage the resources. And for 200 years, management has been the primary source of real jobs and real growth. The skill of management becomes a thing that matters. My sense is as we move into a world where everything that can get automated will be automated, that the work that will be left to do will be the work of creativity. The work that is human, that is about our aspirations and ambitions for ourselves, that is emotional, intuitive, sometimes a result of accidents, the stuff that machines and automation don't do. And that there will be a lot of this kind of work. Now, economists might argue differently with me, and most of what we hear in the press today is about how automation has taken away our jobs. But I want us to just consider for a moment that perhaps we can create a world where work is human and creative. And then the question is, what's the role for people like us in that world? Einstein says the intuitive mind is a sacred gift and the rational mind a faithful servant. But I think for the past 200 years, we've had the opposite happen, that the rational mind has left a little bit to do for the intuitive mind. And all we've created is businesses and a notion of commerce and industry, which is incredibly rational and mechanical and therefore not human. But automation is beginning to change that. And in our work, I'm beginning to see that what we frequently are doing is equipping people to be creative in jobs that we haven't typically thought about being creative before. And it's changing our work in some really fundamental, maybe obvious ways that I'd like to share with you right now. The first is that the design team, the creative team on anything we do is no longer the Wolff Olins team. It's everyone. We're having to find ways to engage people, not just to find information for them or test things on them, but to go somewhere that they don't typically do in their daily work to be creative. It's forcing us to be generous and patient with people and humble. My favorite days at Wolff Olins are the days where we fill it, typically at the beginning of a project, where we fill it with kids, because they can allow us, they can tap much more quickly into a way of thinking about creativity, in the way of thinking about a problem, and think about it really differently from the rest of us. I often say that if you can create something that a kid can do, even if, like my son, gets it wrong the first time and then gets it right later on, that you've created something that has real essence. And so for us, involving more and more people in the creative process is critical. The second big change is that the place of the creative process is no longer inside our studios and our places of comfort. It's outside in the world. Just over 20 years ago, Wolff Olins helped create, I wasn't there at the time, helped create the brand Orange, which was a brand for the UK market for telephones. Something's happening to our slides. One more. Good. 20 years later, in a world that's very different, in a world of mobile phones and tariffs and all that stuff is very different, where Orange was now in 35 markets everywhere from Paris to the Congo. They asked us to figure out how to make this brand essential to people's lives again. And so we created a little box and didn't say anything else about it, and the box went out into the world to really partner people to create what Orange could become.
We're a brand focused on what's essential to people. To know what's essential, we need to be close to our customers, in touch with their lives and what matters to them right now.
Właściwie to co to jest?
Qu'est-ce que ça peut bien être? Chciałabym, gdyby przycisnę ten guzik w tym pudełeczku, żeby w tym momencie była cała kolejka ludzi, którzy chętnie by kupili kwiatki.
بدي هاي العلبة تخليني أسرع خباز بالأردن.
Me gustaría que mi tienda fuese también online, que pudiera vender online y así poder tener mucha más clientela.
Eh bien, rencontrer chaque jour une charmante personne pour pouvoir parler et autres. Voilà.
Si esta caja pudiera hacer algo por mí esta noche, un concierto de Madonna sería genial.
No podría vivir sin música, porque es la gasolina que necesito para mis estados de ánimo, para los momentos.
Voilà, là j'ai cliqué mon home studio.
Yo es que la tenemos, lo que pasa es que no sabemos utilizarla él y yo. Tenemos que depender de mi hijo.
D'accord, boîte bi moom bëgg naa mu dimbali ma mun a gérer sama xaalis yónnee ko mu gaaw wala ma jël ko mu gaaw wax dëgg yàlla mu dimbali.
Avec la banque mobile, la vie est plus facile.
بالكلام أنا خليني أتعلم الإنجليزية بسرعة.
I think after 1 month of traveling, I think that now I would like just to be with my family and friends.
أخبيه؟ كنا أخبي ماما، سمح حد ياخدها مني.
So how can we be essential to our customers? It couldn't be more simple. We listen. We listen to find out what's really important to them. We listen so we can respond with what they need. We listen so we can be useful, so we can be valuable, so we can be essential in their lives every day.
In Orange's offices in Paris, where a lot of the decisions are made, a little orange box sits there. And every few minutes, somebody will hit the box just to remind them what's going on in people's lives as part of a creative process in everything they do. So I've talked about the design team is everybody. The place of doing it is outside. What are we trying to create? I like saying we're no longer creating fruits, the finished thing that people can consume. We're creating seeds for them to move forward. And in helping Skype, the way that Skype has been able to really push its brand out into the world is because the things we create for Skype are just tools for them to think and make things of their own. So I'll play another little video that just is, this is a deliverable into Skype.
There's me. And there's you. And there's Mavis and Ethel, if you want. The Skype logo always sits in the middle because Skype brings us together. Skype provides the features that enable us to communicate. Video, calling, messaging, and sharing. Here's one we made earlier.
So increasingly, the things we are making are not the finished products. It's curriculum, it's ways of thinking, and it pushes the design brain into all sorts of new ways. Because if I'm not trying to make something that's finished, I'm trying to make something that inspires you to push it on, to take it further. That's a completely different design brief, and it pushes us in ways that I just find really exciting and wonderful. And then the final thing I wanted to talk about is probably the most basic one, the one that unlocks all the other three, is that we have to think about our place of work as a place of play. Every day in the office, we have to allow experiments to happen. We have to make the office a place where experiments happen, but also where people are trying different things. The office can't be these pristine design offices that we used to talk about, because we need paint to splatter all over the place. We need people to go into rooms and just play around. The experience of arriving at Wolff Olins should feel like I'm about to go into a place where we can have some fun every single day. By thinking about the creative process as simply play, we're able to, at Wolff Olins, involve people who are not typically part of the creative process. The IT folk, the guys who work in the kitchen become part of our creative process. And every day we're working through these kinds of things. I find play is particularly important because without it, the creative process becomes often one hard, undiluted slog trying to convince people to do things. But play just makes us all human. Hi. So, 4 ways in which I think that our work is really understanding that what we're trying to do is help other people be creative, and that's a super creative thing in its own right. So I want to end with just some remarks on the back of this. The first thing to say that this is not an agenda for mediocrity. This is not saying, well, whatever they create is fine, and it's not something that absorbs us of absolute highest standards. If anything, it's a radical agenda that says that what we're in the world to do isn't to optimize corporate or institutional machines. It's to create things that have the power to transform people's lives. And second comment I want to make is while everybody is creative, not everybody is a designer. And as the creative profession that is most capable of creating both usefulness and desire, the design industry has a humongous opportunity to be at the heart of how work itself gets transformed over the next 50 to 100 years. As big swathes of our economy become automated and people begin to find that the things that they can do more than anything else are creative. And by that I simply mean that they can bring together some form of craft and some kind of thought to make something that hasn't existed before. I think that's nearly a sacred calling for design. I love what the researcher Brené Brown says, and I'll just read that in conclusion. She says, creativity is the way I share my soul with the world. Without it, I'm not okay. I love that line. Without it, I'm not okay. The only unique contribution we will make to this world will be born of creativity. And my response to that is, amen. Thank you very much.
All right. So what I want to know is, have you ever dealt with a client who says, I don't want the seeds, I want the fruit? You know, like they don't want to go through the creative process with you. Like has that ever happened to you? And what do you do to like make it into a thing that makes it worthwhile for both of you to go on this big journey together?
So the answer is yes, often. I joined Wolff Olins just under 10 years ago, and actually one of the things that people often said is, just do an orange for us. We just want orange, because particularly in Britain, orange was such a transformative brand. It really changed the way people thought about brands. So we get that a lot. I think one of the things that changes it is to talk about the process of creativity, and to talk about their role and how rewarding going through the process is. I think the notion of arriving at our office and beginning to understand how this is playful and engaging and personally rewarding really matters to our clients. I think when we are at our best and when we're making the right decisions, if they insist on the fruit, we'll probably say, well, we're not the right people for you. And on the occasions when we've not kept our principles and taken that on, it's never worked out.
Right.
Yeah.
And what about does this role of, so I mean, you're envisioning a world in which there is no creative class anymore. Everyone is creative across all spectrum. And so what is the role, what does a company of all creative workers do, and who runs it?
Not me. Well, you know, people in this room can talk about that because anybody who's running a company here is running a company of creative people.
Absolutely.
And I think that there are good models from the design industry of how those businesses will be run. And we're already beginning to see designers leading great businesses. I think it's because we can think about three things really clearly. We can think about vision. What is it that we're in the world to create? And I think every organization needs to have that purpose behind it. I would say that to any CEO, regardless of what they think they do, that purpose being clear, because that's what's going to attract that creative person. If I can create anywhere, I'm going to create it where it matches my purpose and what I want to achieve in the world. I think the second thing is actually, if creativity has to be automated, that the quality of your ability to automate becomes really important. Mm-hmm. You know, so even in Wolff Olins, the fact I can tell a young 25-year-old designer in Dubai that there are opportunities for you in San Francisco actually is quite a big thing. So what's your platform and how useful and usable is that, and how much does it transform stuff? And I think it's just back to the word play. What's the nature of our relationship with each other? Mm-hmm. And I think in a world where we've overemphasized product and productivity, we've made work this really inhumane thing. And if we can make work much more about our relationships with each other, this is something we constantly talk about. How are we today? You know, and what are we doing together? And you know, these are human relationships. We spend more time at work than anywhere else. It should be fun and creative and playful.
And what does that mean to the people who work for you? Like what do you, I mean, it's the power relationship and work is actually changing a lot, because there are a lot of opportunities for designers and creative people now, more so than you know, probably when you started. So what is that like to run that when you know that there's a lot of opportunities? And
it means that when one of our best people sends me a text message and says, I need to talk to you quickly, I panic. They're leaving. And then I call and they go, I just want to talk about the game. Calm down. No, that's I always say, if our company wants to grow, we have to be the best place for the best people to do the best work of their lives. Yeah. And that's the thing we're working on daily. It ain't easy because of commercial realities and all that, but daily we're just trying to make sure that everybody, that when people arrive at Wolff Olins for anything, that they can see that they're going to have the time of their lives. But you know, so are lots of other companies out there. So it's a battle. And
is play the secret of the best place to do the best work of their lives? What is what is the key ingredient that someone could change?
So I think it is, even though there's a bit of me that says if that doesn't lead to the right kind of challenges, then it isn't. Mm-hmm. But I think if you can make play purposeful, and if you can have that, you know, in our business, we want to create organizations. Our mission in the world is to create organizations that are both good and desirable, and we want to do that in a playful, human way. If you can do that, then that's what we're trying to achieve.
And this vision of everyone being a creative worker, is this a utopian vision? Is this the one you're driving this forward?
It's certainly one that I can't make an argument that would satisfy an economist.
Right.
So I'm not sure I have all the, you know, they talk about incentives and all that. I'm
right.
not sure that's true. It's simply one that I think is super attractive.
Yeah.
If you think about how, again, we've said this already, if you think about how much work, 98% of the people in this world do repetitive, mundane, dull tasks. There might be other visions, but there are few visions I think that are more attractive to me than transforming that and making those jobs creative and human and enjoyable.
And so where does the role of, I mean, you mentioned that all creative people are not designers. So in that world, what is the role of the designer?
I think the role of the designer is multifold.
Yeah.
I think while we're not creating the fruits, we should create things that people go, I want more of that, and I want to do more of that. That's why examples are great, and those examples have to be the best there is. We always talk about creating exemplars so that people are inspired by that. And then I think it is about designing tools that people want to use, whether those people are customers, whether the thing I'm creating is for an end user to be creative, or whether it's for employees to be creative. Those things, again, they have to have more than just utility. They have to be things people desire and want to use every day.
Right. And are they going to be there? I mean, is work going to modify this? Is education going to modify this? I mean, I feel like being creative is part of your development no matter what, and it only gets eliminated over time for the most part.
Yeah. And again, if you want to look for early seeds, and anybody who has kids here in the sort of the 8 to 12-year-old range, like I do, and so you
I have twin boys who are 8 years old.
I don't know what your experience is, but it's different from when we were growing up. I think the schools even are beginning to get that we can't drill everything out of these kids by making them do things and follow by rote. My daughter has 3 hours a week, which is just creative thinking, and they just drop an exercise. What's worse, to kill a dog or to kill a cat, and just think about it.
Jesus.
That's what they're doing with that's what they're doing. Yeah, you know.
That's a terrible question.
Yeah. See how you're struggling with that? Kids can deal with that. So the educational system will have to change, but I think that's happening slowly. I think schools are beginning to realize that we can't just produce identikit kids for the industrial age. And I think in 10 years' time, everybody coming out of schools will know how to code. I don't think that's the answer, but change has happened.
Yeah, one.
And I think within 20, 30 years, creativity as a core skill, just like language, the ability to read and add and code are becoming core skills. I think the ability to create will be a fundamental skill of everybody coming out of schools.
Yeah. I mean, I think that all of us who have kids or want to have kids really loves the idea of that future. And there's nothing more satisfying than watching your kids create things.
Yeah.
And it's also like, as somebody who now, like I used to make a show by myself and now I make a show with other people, yeah. I do not mean to treat my employees or not my children at all, but watching them create things and my staff is an amazing process.
It's so rewarding.
Yeah.
It's, you know, and doing my job, see our folks be creative, and then nowadays seeing our clients be creative who came to us and we're not creative, you guys are the creative, and you're seeing people come with ideas and making things in this world where so much can be automated. I don't have more rewarding experiences in what I do than that.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank
Ije,
you.
everybody.
Thank you.